But nonetheless, really, one walks in here and the love, the energy, the camaraderie, the spiritedness, the warmth, the friendship, the honesty and candidness make this place very special. And as I was looking around the room, I thought to myself that at your age, which is pretty young, most of you have seen and heard almost everything. It used to be that you had to be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 to experience everything. You know, once you were 96 years old, you've seen it all, you've heard it all. But I look here at 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds, and 25-year-olds. And you have more or less seen almost everything.
Rabbi, you ain't seen shit.
I know that. So
the 40-year-olds have to catch up.
Right.
How's 40-year-olds?
Now, I'm not now gonna be one of those romantic, delusional people who speak of the good old days, because the old days were not so good. They were good in some ways, they were horrible in other ways. But by being old, they're just different. But I do want to say that when I was your age, I wasn't naive, but I knew very little of what you know today. It was much more, I was more sheltered and living in a certain cocoon, which in many ways is really the reality of your generation. Generation that has been, not by choice, not by your own choice, but really by God's plan, chosen to see reality without any cover-ups, without any camouflaging, without any decorations, to see things in a very raw, naked, real, and authentic way. And somehow God felt that you're capable of picking up the broken pieces and turning them into masterful art. So I congratulate you, each one of you. There was a man named Hemingway, one of America's greatest writers. Hemingway wrote, "Life breaks all people, but some people know how to live in broken places better than others." Hemingway committed suicide. He did not know how to live in a broken place. But what his insight is very penetrating. Namely, that life is challenging, and life affords us the ability to see lots of wholesome things and lots of broken things. And the greatness of a life is to be able to learn how, when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos, God told him, "Thank you for breaking them." What was the thank you? The thank you was, thank you for teaching the Jewish people how to find light, not only in wholesome places, but also in broken places. To be able to break the luchos, which are sacred, into little pieces. And then realize that in those little pieces, there's a secret and a music all its own, is very unique. I was standing one night, on President Street between New York and Nostrand Avenue, on the porch of my brother Baruch's house in the middle of the block. And we were chatting, and a group of young boys, not so young, a little younger than you, were walking from the train station. They were walking from the train station on Nostrand down President. And I looked at them and he looked at them, and their demeanor, their countenance, the way they were presenting themselves verbally and in dress and garb was, even by today's standards, not completely defined, should I say, by the norms of the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, even in 2014. My brother was a very warm young
I would
man.
only dine on the kosher kind. No camel, high racks, or rabbit meat.
Went
Thinks
over
you
and
been good,
hugged
but got the wrong
each
feet.
of
Don't eat no
those
pig
boys.
rolling in the mud, split hoof, but it just
Then
doesn't
he came up to me
I don't endorse eating
and he
donkey,
says, "You know what I
pork,
feel
your
about
husband
that?"
horse, and that's grounds for
I said,
divorce.
"No, I don't know what you
Giraffes
feel
are
about
kosher, but who the heck wants to climb
said
up
something very, very
I keep the laws of
insightful.
kashrut. My
You
jaws
may
don't
not
touch
know
no
how
flesh from a
insightful it
beast
is.
with
You'll
paws.
see
I
why
don't
you may
eat
not
no
know.
bear,
But
no
to me,
canine
it's
dogs, no
extremely insightful.
weasel, porcupine, a hedgehog,
I'm
no
going to
feline
explain to you
cats, no
something.
mouse, no rats, no creepy blood-sucking vampire bats, no monkeys and no chimpanzees, and I won't eat you, so please don't eat
sure you'll
me.
be
I
able
don't
to
eat
identify
animals,
with
not
this,
silence.
Rabbi
Been that way for quite some while, but if there came a time when I changed
Approximately
my
the
mind,
year
I would only dine on the
1991,
kosher kind. Get sick
1991,
just think about carrion
assume most
picking
of you
buzzards and
were,
vultures. I'd stick with the chicken. Got no craving for ravens and crows. I'm saving my
creators
appetite if you're serving
primordial
those. No
mind.
penguin wing and no emu leg. I don't want no
The
scrambled
Rebbe,
ostrich
the
egg. No
Rabbi YY Rebbe
no
said
matter
that
how you prepare it,
the
prepare
time
it. I just
of
snack on the
redemption
carrot,
has
take a bite
arrived.
from a bacon, but not from a
Famously,
seagull, no kite, no
he
hawk,
even
no
said you
falcon,
can
no
touch
eagle.
it and
I'm
feel
on a
it.
diet where I stay away
And he even
from
said
all
if you
kind of
open your
raptors,
eyes, your
prey.
mamish
No
feel
foul
it
like an
and
owl
see
with
it.
the big eyes staring. Won't see me tearing to the flesh of a heron. No piece of stork on the end of my
brother
fork.
said
Their white meat's
he
kosher like a
realized that
piece of
all
pork. And I don't eat
children that
animals,
were
not
born
my style. It's
afterwards
been that way for quite some
were
while. But
born
if there came
in
a
an
time when I
era
changed
of
my mind, I would
redemption.
only dine on the
And
kosher
therefore,
kind.
our
I don't
souls
eat no creepy
who were
crawling
born
things,
in an
no
era
lizard
of
legs, no
exile
insect wings,
don't
no slithering
really
snakes,
understand these
riddle of
neshamas
worms crawling
because
around
they
on
come
around,
from a
getting covered in
messianic
dirt.
era,
I'm
from a
no
Mashiach
gamekeeper, I
era.
can't stand bugs, no
And
spiders,
we are
no centipedes,
teaching
no
them
slugs. I'll pass on the
exile-based
cockroach, thank you,
Judaism,
please. I'll take
when
some
really
honey,
their
keep the
souls
bees, no
are
scorpion
looking
with the poison
for
tail,
a
no
higher
ice cargo, I
consciousness
don't
of
eat snails.
Judaism
Never have
because
frog
they're
legs like they do in France. I wouldn't
post-redemption
try that
energy
trade if I
like.
had the chance.
So they're coming
No
to
amphibian,
us,
no
and
reptile,
we're
no
preaching to
salamander,
them.
toad, turtle, crocodile.
They're
BB
coming to
chameleon, I
us,
think I'll
and
scream
we're
in my
preaching
face
to
like
them
from brown to green, 'cause
an
the
exile-based
animals
Judaism,
not
which
been
their
there
souls,
quite some while, but if it
which
came
their
a
souls
time when I
reject
changed my mind, I
would
would
only
only
because
dine on the kosher
of
kind.
their
Only
deep
seafood
connection
with
to a
fins
higher
and scales,
consciousness.
no walrus, dolphins,
And he
or
says in
whales,
most
no
yeshivas,
snails, no crab
can't
legs,
really
no crab
relate to these neshamas, to these souls, because these souls are rejecting the message that is not speaking to them, because they're looking for something much more real and much deeper. This was his insight to me. He was right. He was on target. He was on target. People often lament a new generation. They lament the youth. They talk about all the problems and challenges and whatever, all the problems and challenges. They often fail to realize. I told this to Menachem Mendel tonight on the way here. He graciously drove me, and I shared with him a metaphor. There was a scientist, Heisenberg, shared. He said that there was once a fisherman who took his net and he lowered it into the ocean, and he lifted up the net after a few weeks, and he said he finally has discovered thousands of new species of fish in this net that he had in the ocean for weeks, and he wants to tell the world that there's no fish smaller than 7 inches. Of course, this was the laughing stock of everybody, because people have goldfish in their dining rooms, and goldfish are quite smaller than 7 inches. What was the problem? The problem was that the holes in the net, each hole was 7 inches wide. So therefore, it could not grasp fish smaller than 7 inches, which means that the instruments you use to determine reality will define the reality that you will determine through those instruments. But we often fail to examine the potency and relevance of those instruments. We just come to the conclusion that there's no fish smaller than 7 inches. So if you're using weak or poor instruments that are inadequate, your conclusions will naturally be extremely flawed. I maintain that in order to understand today's youth, you have to change your prescription. You have to put on, it's not just, you can't increase the prescription. You have to completely change your paradigm shift, because our net is wrong. And therefore we're not catching the fish, because our net is simply completely wrong. We're dealing with young people who have a level of honesty that I haven't seen. I don't remember. There's no games, no hypocrisy is not acceptable. All the symptoms of redemption. that you need raw truth, complete truth, MS, complete truth. Not even, like, it was acceptable when I was growing up for a teacher to preach what he didn't believe in. We all knew it. So what? Right? Today, it's almost, you're allergic to it. You go crazy for it. You'll reject the whole thing because this is not so therefore, I want to feel young, I want to feel inspired, I want to feel a little more naked and a little more real. To be able to learn about life, to be able to steer life, to be able to steer life nakedly, squarely in the eyes, without blinking, without moving away, without turning around, without flinching, without cute cliches or cover-ups. On an emotional level, I know that some of you have personally been through, you know, they say a cat has 9 lives, and some of you are like on your 19th life. You've seen loss, you've seen tragedy, you've seen death, you have seen insanity, you've seen abuse, you've seen pain, you've seen rejection, you've seen tears. For people who have seen all of this, the great advantage, that is when you laugh, you really laugh. When you party, you really party. When you celebrate, you really celebrate. And when you live, you actually live. Because many people, they're not really alive. They're simply alive because they never had a chance to die. But most of you had a chance to die. When you live, you actually choose to live.
TV on the screen just makes you not even be free. It's sleazy.
It's very
exhilarating. This is a beautiful world, and now I never want to leave the air that I breathe. The trick to the up my sleeve. The sons and daughters that leave when the mothers seem to grieve. But you know that's another end of another life. People doing the wrong when they think they're doing the right. Obama, Osama, even the big bad I could do anything, but
Can we do tshuva?
It's hard. If you hang out on Aliya,
Palestine, have a rhyme and have peace in his time.
This doesn't mean, you know,
like the messages, I'm desperate without you, like the heaven sent angels are coming. I am one like the
wisdom that comes from the old.
In me,
There's also something very, very Shiach-like, holistic, that comes from a very new generation, and God has chosen you to broken reality.
Judaism in the end, it's in him that's speaking. It's a hippie gets in. You don't have to look out in the chimney.
Young man, a friend of many of yours.
You better live in unity, the Jewish community. Tell me who to be. Any good in you. I know there is nothing you need to prove to me because Judaism brings family together. I tell you.
Many other family members and friends, close friends, community members, Aliya friends, since he was a truly frequent visitor, and not just visitor, he lived and breathed and cherished the beautiful community of Aliya. And he died 2 years ago at the age of 20 on the 11th of Kislev. And there's a component of grief, there's a component of sadness. I don't have to elaborate on that. It's very obvious, it's understandable, especially considering the age of the Baal Yortzeit. But nonetheless, we're here together to remember, not just to remember, but to continue his melody, and to continue his passion, and to continue his love, and as his mother said, to remember him not just for the past, for the future. So it's really looking at a broken event and trying to bring light, trying to bring some goodness, some positive energy, some energy of love and unity, which is certainly what his soul cherishes on this It's very real. We don't see souls, we don't hear souls seriously. Although many of you do. But souls are a very real reality. I remember what the Rebbe said that when a soul is elevated on its Yortzeit, all the people connected to it are also elevated. They're also invigorated. So on his elevation of his Yortzeit, in the world he is in, it's an opportunity for all of us to look at something tragic and difficult and broken, and yet in the tradition of Aliya, which means elevation, Aliya is really taking the lead up, the broken luchas, turning to a catalyst that is leading to elevation. The Rambam says that Moshe instituted the 7 days of Shiva, and the 7 days of sacrifice. He says it's also very easy that his brother, father-in-law is here to check him out, and to see the people he's hanging out with at Aliya, and to make sure that his daughter is safe. He's hanging out in a wonderful place, one of the most cherished places in Brooklyn and Crown Heights. Rabbi YY, you have nothing to worry. But it does remind me of one of the greater jokes, and that is that there was this Baal Tshuva, Chabad Baal Tshuva, went to learn Hadar Torah. You know what Hadar Torah is? It's like a yeshiva for Baal Tshuva. And he calls his mother, after 6 months of not speaking to her. His mother's a San Francisco, good Jewish secular woman, you know, who eats cranberry sauce and turkey at Thanksgiving, maybe even Yom Kippur. And he calls his mother, and he's this real inspired Baal Tshuva, Hadar Torah, Lubavitch, you know, full force, right? And his mother says, "How you doing, son? How you doing, David? How is this experience with the Chabad? Is it really a cult?" And this. He's like, "It's unbelievable here. And Mom, I want to tell you that today is Yud Kislev." She's like, "What is Yud Kislev?" It's like the 10th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev. She's like, "What's that?" He says it's the day that the Mittele Rebbes was liberated from prison. Who's that? The Mittele Rebbes, Rabbi Dov Ber, the son of Rabbi Shnei Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, in the year 1827, was liberated from Tsarist and prison. And therefore, Mom, it's a good day for you to do mitzvahs and give charity and pray and do all good things. Okay, son, have a wonderful time. She calls up next week. Says, "Son, how you doing?" He says, "It's awesome, and I want to tell you today is Yud Kislev." She's like, "What's that?" He's like, "The day when Rabbi Shnei Zalman himself was liberated from imprisonment. He was in prison and he came out, and it's an awesome, unbelievable day." She's like, "Okay." She takes a break. She calls him back a few months later.
After a while,
he's like, "How is it going?" "Mom, it's unbelievable, and today is Yud Beis Tammuz." She's like, "What's that?" He's like, "The day when Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Alexander, the 6th Lubavitch Rebbe, was liberated from communist prison. It's like an unbelievable day for you, you know, like to metamorphosize your life." So she's like, "Son, you know, I'm really happy that you're doing so well. But you know, the first time you spoke about the process, Mittler out of prison,
moved on,
the next guy, and now I'm just a little worried about the people you're hanging out with, and who are all being. I mean, I'm happy that they're coming out of prison.
Slowly, I ended up back and forth. I ended up leaving my note, coming back to Miami.
Convicts?
Thinking I was going to jump back.
Are they all in prison? So he's hanging out with very good people. But really the juxtaposition between a Yortzeit and the preparations of a wedding are very meaningful, because it's the story of the Jewish people. They never allowed downfalls and brokenness to stifle them and paralyze them and kill them. But they used it as a springboard for rejuvenation. Rejuvenation as in J-E-W.
Every day a person's growing.
So I read this story.
Slowly, one step at a time.
Really
you get closer, you feel good, you fight the battles. There's no better feeling than fulfilling your purpose in this world.
Those who are really into music,
I'm lucky enough to be here today and be able to share with you guys my story. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
His name was
and we should go from strength to strength.
Right.
Toscanini, right? You're Italian, huh? Toscanini. He died in 1957. First of all, he was a brilliant musician, composer, director. Two, he was a photographic memory, so he had this nuance, sensitivity to musical notes that was extraordinary. And his biographer wrote a biography of Toscanini. And there, he writes the following episode. He said one night he phones Toscanini, and says, can I come over tonight to speak to you for this biography that I'm preparing? Toscanini says, tonight is not a good night, I'm busy. What's going on, Toscanini? He says, I used to direct a symphony overseas. I have now given it over to somebody else, who's now going to be directing the symphony for the first time since I moved. And I arranged with them, this is in the 50s, that through shortwave radio, I should be able to listen to the symphony in my home. And since it's my symphony, I need to listen to it. I want to listen to it. You can't disturb me tonight. For a biographer, this is a priceless opportunity. He says, can I come watch you listening to your symphony? He says, yes, as long as you don't interrupt me or say a word while it's going on. So the biographer comes. Toscanini listens to the symphony from overseas, directed by somebody else, but it was his symphony for many years. And finally, when it finishes, this biographer, who loved music, was blown away. He turns to Toscanini and he says, that was incredible, no? That was amazing, that was beautiful. And Toscanini says, not really. He's like, what was the problem with it? What was the issue? He says, the issue? The issue was, there were supposed to be 15 violinists, and there were only 14. He thought the guy is completely meshuggah, listening to a symphony on the radio with hundreds or dozens of instruments. He says there was a violin missing. Curiously, he phones the new director the next day overseas and asks him, how many musicians showed up to the symphony last night? And the man says there was supposed to be 120 musicians, but only 119 showed up. Which instrument was missing? He said we were supposed to have 15 violinists, only 14 showed up. He was going to fall off his chair. He comes back to us and he says, Arturo, you have to explain this to me. I'm standing with you in the house, we're listening to the radio, we're singing with 120 musicians. How in the world did you know that 14 violins were playing instead of 15? How? Toscanini looks at him and says, that's the difference between you and me. You're part of the audience. I wrote this music. And when I wrote this music, I wrote the notes in a way that for all the notes to play, they require 15 violinists. When I was listening to this song, to this ballad, to the symphony, not all the notes were met. And that's when I knew that one violin was missing, and therefore those notes were not met. And when I read this story, I thought to myself, what an extraordinary metaphor for life. Looking at yourself and looking at people. We're the audience. I didn't create the music, I didn't write the music, but for the creator of the music, each note is accounted for, and each note requires its musician to play it, and when that musician is missing, it's never the same. And what that means is that the music, the notes that you play in life are indispensable. Nobody before you or after you will ever be able to play those notes. Nobody will be able to introduce that style of music into this world. Even if you're not a musician, but your very soul represents a music. And even for the audience, it doesn't make a big difference. But for the creator of the symphony and the director of the symphony and the writer of the music, it makes all the difference. Even if one of those notes or one of those violinists don't show up, because there's something eternally missing in that symphony, in that ballad. They tell a story that there was once this little girl in California. She was standing at the beach, and as the tide was retreating, the ocean was spitting out starfish. So she felt bad for all these starfish stranded on the shores, and she was lifting up little starfish and throwing them back into the water so they could live. And this old cynical man comes over to this girl and says, "You foolish little girl, this beach stretches for 35 miles. There are millions and millions of starfish stranded all over the beach here. Even if you will stand 12 hours a day and throw your starfish into the water, you will not be making any difference. You won't be accomplishing anything." And the little girl lifts up one starfish, and as she throws it back into the water, she tells this old man, she says, "For this one, I made all the difference." And in life, often, the greatest tragic mistake we can make is look in the mirror and say, "I don't make a difference." And the old cynic will say, "Of course you don't make a difference, you're just wasting your time." And somebody else will say, "Who cares if there's 14 violinists or 15 violinists?" But the truth is, there is somebody, something for whom you make all the difference. Because each and every single one of you and one of us has a light that your presence brings to this universe that nobody before you or after you, living today or ever, from the greatest giants to the most simple men or women, can fulfill in the way you fulfill it. There's no two snowflakes that are identical. There's no two bodies that have ever looked identical in the history of humanity over 5,500 years. No two brains, no two souls or bodies that have ever been identical. Every person is a different story. I'm going to tell you a story. And I heard this story from the person it actually happened to be my brother. And the story, mamish, was an eye-opener. My brother, my oldest brother, Simon, gives a class each week in Manhattan. And he told me that one week he saw that a person came in and he was somewhat crippled. He had difficulties with his motor skills. He had speech impediments. It was hard for him to walk, navigate his body. He came each week to learn. And after a few months, he finally came over to my brother and started speaking to him. For handicapped children. Since they were wealthy, they took care of him. They made sure he had everything he needed. But he never came home and they never visited. In order there shouldn't be any problems. He was now 30 years old. And he tells my brother that he's never met his father. He's never met his mother. They live in the same Manhattan, the same city. But they never met. They send him money. They send him whatever he needs. He's a cripple, 30 years old. But they never once met him. He never once met them. They never invited him. Because they wanted to keep that emotional distance, not to make their life complicated. You know, you meet your kid, you feel guilty, etc. My brother felt that it was his opportunity to unite a child with parents. He asks the boy for the last name, his father's name, and he calls up his father, nervously, obviously. You know, when you make that really uncomfortable call. And he says, "Listen, I'm sorry for intruding into your business. My name is Simon Jacobson. I have come to know your son over the last few months, and I want to tell you, he is a glowing human being, physically disabled. But what a person, what a soul, his intelligence, his wisdom, his sensitivity, his honesty, his spirituality. And I think you would enjoy meeting him very much. It's your son. You would enjoy meeting him. I think you should give yourself and him the opportunity." The man on the other side of the phone wasn't expecting such a telephone call. He says, "Nobody invited you to mix in to my personal affairs and business." Terach. He hangs up the phone. What do? He waits a few weeks, calls back. The man says, "Have you not gotten the message? Do not mix into our personal business." Boom. What do? He calls mother. A mother's heart is mushy. Mother starts crying on the phone and says, "You have to talk about this to my husband. This is a decision we made 30 years ago. And we're not in a position now of evaluating our entire position. You have to speak to my husband about this. Bye-bye. My brother waits 6 months, and his heart is torn. He feels so bad for this kid. He calls up the father again, and he says to him, before you hang up on me, I want to tell you something about your son. He's not angry. He's not resentful. He's not furious. He's not full of vengeance. He's a beautiful soul. And if anything, his challenges made him an incredible person. He doesn't want anything from you. He's not going to move into your apartment. He's not asking you. He's not asking you to invite him to the house to live there. He's not asking you anything. But I think he deserves to meet his parents. You know, there are children who are orphans. They never met their mother. They never met their father, or they were young children when their parent or parents died. And all their life, they want to hear stories about their parents. When somebody says, I knew your mother, I knew your father, I knew your brother, tell me about them, tell me about them. They look at pictures and they wonder what this person was like and what life would have been if they had a parent. You have a living child who has living parents. You're going to deprive your child from the ability of seeing his father, seeing his mother. There's something off about it. Just meet. The man says, let me think about it. Boom. Calls him back a while later, and to my brother's shock, he says, okay, with one condition, you have to be there. He didn't understand why, but perhaps he wanted this buffer zone, emotional buffer zone. Fine. They arranged a meeting Sunday afternoon. My brother showed up. The 30-year-old boy showed up. A penthouse overlooking Central Park. Gorgeous, stupendous, a multi-million-dollar penthouse. Told me you walk in and mamish, you don't know that in Manhattan there's such a spacious home you wouldn't imagine. The views are tremendous. He sees how the house is kept up. He understands what the boy was saying, that they're wealthy, affluent, and extremely influential. The father is sitting at the table, the mother is sitting at the table. The boy walks in, he sits down, my brother sits down, and nobody is giving anybody eye contact. Father's looking in one direction, the mother's looking in another direction, he's looking down. So what do? So my brother starts talking about Sunday afternoon football. I mean, that's a pretty casual conversation, but won't make anybody uncomfortable. You finish with that, you talk about the weather. You finish with that, you talk about Obama. You finish with that, you talk about global warming. You finish with that, you talk about Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Middle East. You finish with that, you talk about Ferguson, of course. But after 10 minutes, you finish talking about the basics. You know, it's called elevator talk, right? You finish, so what now? And nobody, you know, everyone is so uncomfortable. So my brother has no choice, you know, he's the shachar. The matchmaker got to make it good, right? So he mixes in and he says, okay, listen, we all know that we're here for a reason. We're not here to discuss Sunday football, as exciting and entertaining and important a topic it is. There's a shidduch crisis, that's also true. And there's a lot of other crises in this world, yeah? There's a tuition crisis, there's an education crisis, there's a lot of crises, we all know that. Yeah. There's a Mashiach crisis for 2,000 years, that's 100%. Yeah. That's the source of all the crises. If we can get rid of that crisis, everything will follow suit. So he says, we're here to meet. And he turns to the father and mother and says, I want to introduce you to your son. I had the privilege of knowing him now for a long time, comes every week to learn with me in Manhattan. And I thought you would both cherish the opportunity of meeting each other, and that's why we're here today. And the boy, who has a serious speech challenge and a lot of motor difficulties in his body, he was serious disabilities, opens his mouth. He speaks slowly. He can't pronounce every word clearly.
No camel, high racks, or rabbit meat. They chew their cud, but got the wrong feet. Don't eat no pig rolling in the mud. Split hood, but it just doesn't chew his cud.
Mama,
I don't endorse eating donkey.
Papa.
Of course, serve your husband horse,
Couldn't
and that's
say
grounds for the
Papa.
horse.
Couldn't say
Giraffes are
Papa
kosher, but
or
who the heck
Mama.
wants to climb up and shake that 8-foot neck?
Couldn't
I
that
keep the
vowel.
laws of kashrut. My jaws
Mama,
don't touch no flesh from
Papa.
a beast with paws. I don't eat no bear, no canine dogs, no weasel, porcupine, or hedgehogs, no feline cats, no mouse, no rats, no creepy blood-sucking vampire bats, no monkeys and no chimpanzees, and I won't eat you, so please don't eat me. I don't eat animals, not my style. It's been that way for quite some while, but if there came a time when I
Mama
changed
and
my mind,
Papa,
I would only dine on the kosher kind.
you're also
I get
not
sick
correct.
just think about carrion picking, buzzards and vultures.
I have
got no craving for
forgiven
ravens
you.
and crows. I'm saving my appetite if you're serving those. No
Your
penguin wing and no
imperfection.
emu leg. I don't want no scrambled.
I hope
egg,
one
no
day
no matter how
you will
prepare
be
it,
able
stare it. I just snack on the
forgive
carrot,
me
take a bite from a bacon, but not from a seagull, no kite, no hawk, no falcon, or eagle.
Just
I'm
like
on a diet where I stay
have.
away from all kind of raptors and birds of prey. No fowl like an owl with the big eyes staring. Won't see me tearing to the flesh of a heron. No piece of stork on the end of my fork, cause their white meat's kosher like a piece of pork. And I don't eat animals, not my style. It's been that way for quite some while, but if there came a time
Even
when I
the
changed my
father
mind, I would only dine on the kosher
also
kind.
finally melted.
I don't eat no creepy
racist.
crawling things, no lizard
that
legs,
point,
no insect wings, no
my brother
slithering snakes,
understood he has no
wiggling
place
worms
to
crawling
be.
around on the
It's like a
ground, getting
shotgun
covered in
after
germs.
the
I'm no anteater, I can't stand bugs, no spiders, no centipedes,
You know,
no
I know once a
slugs, not
shotgun
cockroach,
sells a
no
chassan and
snakes,
kala, I'm
I'll
moving
take
in
some
with
honey,
you.
can keep the bees,
I
no
need a
smoke
place
in
to
with
live
the poison tail,
for 10
no
years,
escargot,
rent-free.
I don't eat snail,
They looked at
never
him
have
like
frog
he
legs
shouldn't
like they do in France, or
He
wouldn't
said,
try that
without me,
trick
you
if I
wouldn't have
had the
been
chance.
successful. I'm the one you need
No
in
reptile,
between.
no salamander,
But we all know a shotgun is good for the initial meeting. At some point you got to know when to say Bayachem L'Shalom and say Schem L'Shalom. Learn from the angels. Come in, stick around 20, 30 seconds, say Schem L'Shalom, have a wonderful shot.
No walrus, dolphins, or
Saved
humpback whales, no
himself. He
seahorse,
said,
sea
say Schem
lions, sea
L'Shalom, and
snails, no
walked out.
crab legs, no red lobster.
A family was reunited. But those words of that boy, I think, encapsulate so much of the truth that real Torah, real Chassidus teach. Nobody is perfect, but have you forgiven yourself for your imperfections? It sounds simple, of course you have. Have you? Some of us don't forgive our children for their imperfections. We say we do, but we don't. I need you to be like this for me to be able to accept you. But my question to you is, do you forgive yourself? Have you really made peace with yourself? And to make peace with yourself is the hardest person to make peace with. It's easier to make peace with almost everybody in the world. Even your mother-in-law.
Rabbi, you want to say an extra kapitel for the soldiers? Extra time for the soldiers.
But to make peace with yourself, oy gewalt. And I'm going to show this to you in a very profound and simple way. What's the name of the Jewish people? What is our name in Hebrew? Yisrael. Am Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael. Our homeland is Eretz Yisrael, Torah Yisrael. Yisrael. Where did this name come from? Why aren't we called Avraham, Yitzchok, Yaakov, Moshe? We should be called Moseites, Bnei Moshe. Yisrael. Where did that name come from? The answer is, actually,
Amen.
Parshas Vayishlach, Yaakov was on his way home from Turkey, from Haran. It was always an exciting place. Then you had Lavan, now you have ISIS. And same area. He's on his way home, and in the middle of the night, he's going to meet Esav, who wants to kill him. After 20 years, in the middle of the night, oh, today's Shir Chumash. Yeah. What happens? You know the niggin. Vayivaser Yaakov levadai, vayeavek ish. You remember that? Vayivaser Yaakov levadai, vayeavek ish. Yaakov remains alone. A guy once came to a Rav and he said, I need a job. So the Rav says, no. He says, I have two offers. I could become a singer or I could become a dancer. What should I do? So the Rav says, you should become a dancer. says, why, you have seen me dance? He says, no, but I heard you sing. Vayivasa, Yaakov remains alone, and a man battles him till dawnbreak. Battles him and wounds him, he maims him. In the morning, Yaakov says, bless me. He changes his name from Yaakov to Yisrael. Changes his name from Yaakov to Yisrael, and that becomes our name. If you want to understand who we are, you got to go back to that story. And now I want to ask you, who was Yaakov battling? It says he remained alone in the middle of the night, and he battled with a man. But if he was alone, there's nobody to battle with. Alone means alone. So who was he battling? But what was the battle about? Friends, open your hearts. Open your hearts. Okay? Your hearts are open, but open them even more. Listen to this. The word Yaakov means heal. Who gives their son a name Heal? What did the therapist think about it? Hi, what's your name? Heal. Really? Why would your mother name you Heal? Why would your father name you Heal? Well, his name was a joke. You're going to get it. Okay. His name was a joke, so it's great. Yamoid, Heal, Ben Joke. Great self-confidence. Why they name him a Heel? You remember? I don't mean to give back nightmares from yeshiva. But when he was coming out of the womb of his mother, he was holding on to the heel of his brother. Who in the world names their son Heel because he's holding on to the heel of his brother? He's not even holding on to his own heel, for heaven's sake. Then it would be a cute scene. You would put it on Facebook, you would take a picture with this kid comes out holding on to his own heel. It's cute. But today you don't take pictures of it. Oh, you take pictures of God. But if you would come out of the womb of your mother, hold that position, it's cute. But he's holding on to his brother's heel. So they name him Heel because he's holding on to his brother's heel. What does that tell you psychologically about people? He's holding on to his brother's heel, and that's the name Yaakov. Now listen to this. They get a little older. His brother comes home hungry. He sees sushi on the table. He says, I want sushi or lentils. He says, no problem. Sell me your birthright. He gets his birthright. So he's holding on to his heel. Now he gets his birthright. Now they get older, and his father wants to give the older one blessing. Then he comes, dresses up like his brother, and takes his blessing. So you see what's going on? Who does Yaakov want to be like? He's holding on to his brother's heel. He takes his brother's birthright. He takes his brother's blessing. Somehow there's something in Esav that is very appealing to him. And Esav hates his guts. Esav wants to kill him. Esav, huh? Nice. Woo! Nice. Torah, yeah, Torah. Esav wants to kill him. But now look at this. And he prepares for war. What happens when Esav meets him? He gives him the biggest teddy bear hug. And a pat down. No, fine, but in pshat. He hugs him, he kisses him, they cry, they love each other. What happened? Nobody knows what happened. The answer is Yaakov battled himself in the middle of the night. And listen to what the battle was. Once and for all, Yaakov had to make a decision. And the decision he had to make is, will he have the courage to be himself, or will he always feel the need to be Esav? You see, so many of us in life are always saying this to ourselves. If only my mother would have done this, my father would have done this, my parents would have done this, my yeshiva would have done this, my Rebbe would have done this, when I was 14 this would have happened, when I was 16, if only I would be like my brother, like my sister, like my dad, like my uncle, like my nephew, like my niece, if only I would have a different brain or a different heart, a different community, a different school, a different mother, a different this, a different that, then I would be a success story. But because I am I, therefore X, Y, Z. And I'm always looking at Esav and feeling there is where love is, there is where success is, there is where it's happening. And I'm just Nebuch, this little loser nerd who has to find himself in a struggling world. In the middle of the night, Yaakov had to ask himself, will you ever have the courage to really love yourself? Will you ever have the courage to embrace yourself? Now, I don't mean this in words, who doesn't love them. I mean this in a very deep place. Will you ever really be able to accept you? Everyone said, okay? Listen to this. Ob ich bin nicht, weil du bist du und du bist du, weil ich bin nicht nicht ich und du bist nicht du. Ob ich bin nicht, weil ich bin ich und du bist du, weil du bist du, bin ich und du bist ich. Und du bist du. Oh, real Freudian slip. Oh, that was a real Freudian slip, no joke. Well, you got that? Should I do it in English? I'll do it in English for those of you who studied on the Torah. Like me and Nati Shemte. If I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you, because I am I because of you, and you are you because I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, and you are you, and now we can begin to schmooze. You got that? And that's what you have to know in life. Can Yaakov be Yaakov, or does Yaakov always have to be Esav? Will I always look at the other person, or always ask what if? Or will you be able to say like Toscanini, you are exactly who you're supposed to be. Your story is exactly what your story was supposed to be. Now take that life and turn it into a piece of music. And you know what happens at the end of the night? Yaakov is limping. He's limping. You know what this man is telling him? He's telling him, Yaakov, you're a great guy. But as a result of trying to be somebody else, you've been limping your whole life. Now some of us have a physical limp, but some of us don't have a physical limp. We're maybe erect and strong and even muscular. You may even go to the gym and bench press 395. Right? So you're not limping at all. You're not limping at all. But you know what? Some of us have a psychological limp. You know what a psychological limp is? A psychological limp is I may be physically fine, erect, strong, powerful, but internally I'm limping. Internally, I don't appreciate my soul. I don't appreciate me. I don't appreciate my shlichus in this world. I didn't want to run around God's unconditional love to me as His person in this world, as His servant in this world, and I'm always turning my back. I'm always limping. I'm always ashamed. I'm always seeking and wondering. I can't be free. I can't celebrate who I really am. And Yaakov realizes that he's limping, and he turns to his inner child and he says, so what should I do? And the guy says, you need a name change. You're not a heel. Forget Yaakov, you're not a heel anymore. You got to become Yisrael. Yisrael is Leroy. You can't be a heel. You got to be a head. You can't be holding on to somebody else's heel. The guy Wild, he once said, don't live somebody else's life. Don't copy somebody else's life, because that life was taken already.
I just remember that tefillin that I put on.
Somebody once said, we're all born original. Most of us die as copies.
The purpose of a Jew's life is to make the world a better place and connect to the Creator.
Most of us die as copies. Why? They once asked a 104-year-old woman, I saw an interview, what's the advantage of living to 104? And she said, no peer pressure.
Definitely not there yet. Every day we're growing.
Now, this is not about, this doesn't mean whatever I'm in the mood of, I always have to do because that's my mood. Because sometimes my mood sucks. And sometimes my instincts are telling me to do the wrong thing. What it does mean is cherish
my story.
Cherish your soul, cherish your heart, cherish your mission, cherish your shlichus, cherish your identity, cherish your life story, and most importantly, realize that you can write the most beautiful story of your own life. So when Yaakov makes a name change to Yisrael, you know what the next scene is? Esav kisses him. You know why? Once Yaakov loves Yaakov, Esav can also love Yaakov. As long as Yaakov doesn't love Yaakov, Esau was uncomfortable with Yaakov.
He also got him 7 times before he met too, so he nullified himself.
And the same is true with the Jewish people throughout history. Take Israel. If the world is ever going to love Israel, it's when Israel will love Israel. Because only when Jews really respect themselves can the world respect them, because the world respects Jews who respect themselves. Esav respects Yaakov who respects Yaakov. People love the person who loves himself, who appreciates who he is, and he's not a nachschlepper. He's not a copy, but is an original, is connected. This means you're a leader, you're not a victim, you're not a follower, you're a leader. You're involved in leadership. Those of you who are involved in giving, in creating something, there are 3 types of people. There are people who make things happen, there are people who watch things happen, and there are people you have to tell them something happened. And you got to choose. You got to choose. You're going to make it happen or watch it happen, or just, oh, really, something happened? So, my dear friends, on this great night, Mitzay Chag HaGeula, which is a festival of redemption. Pada b'shalom nafshi means getting out of shackles. When we commemorate the Yortzeit of a dear friend, Yosef Yitzchok Alexander, Yossi of blessed memory, I think that his life of caring and dedication and love and pain beacons to us tonight to be able to redeem ourselves, to be able to liberate ourselves from our shackles, and to be able to forgive yourself for your imperfections, forgive your parents for your imperfections, forgive God for your imperfections, forgive the world for your imperfections, and really be able to redeem yourself, to create a paradigm shift where you're not a heel, you're a head, you're not a victim, you're a leader, you're not responding to life, you're creating life, and you're not holding on to somebody else's heel, but you truly cherish your innermost core, because it's not evil, it's not ugly, and it's not underdeveloped. It's awesome, it's perfect, it's impeccable, and it's flawless. Neshamash and asatabi tahirihi. Finally, there's a Jew in Israel, is the Mittele Rebbes, and he once spoke, and he asked in a speech, he said, what's the difference between Breslov? You know Breslov? You know Breslov? What's the difference, the Mittele Rebbes, between Breslov and Chabad? He said, I'll tell you the difference. Reb Nachman of Breslov wanted all the Breslovs to have long payas. Why? You know why? He said, most of you will end up in hell. How am I going to get you out? So if you have payas, I'll grab onto the payas, I'll schlep you out. He said, a Breslover comes to heaven, and they say, how, no, you've been to Uman, yeah. Were you a good Breslover, B'tachin, Amunah, is Baida, it's not really, go to hell. Goes there, the barbecue gets hot, and he starts screaming, Tate, Abba, Nach, Reb Nachman Rebbe. Nachman of Breslov hears a Jew screaming, comes in, you have payas, takes him by his payas, takes him out of hell, brings him to paradise. Mittele Rebbes is one of the big famous Rebbes in Israel today, says, now there's a story of the Lubavitch. Yosef comes to heaven, they say, no, you were a real chassid of the Rebbe, yeah, go to hell. Comes to purgatory, gets hot, the barbecue gets heated up, hotter, can't take it. So what does he do? He starts screaming, Rebbe, Rebbe! The Rebbe hears a Yid screaming, goes to help him, sees this guy, says, Rebbe! Mittele Rebbes says, the Lubavitch Rebbe comes over to him, takes out $1, gives it to him, says, Hatzlacha Rabbe, and your shlichus right here. And what he brought out was a very powerful message. And that is, there's no such a thing, I'm in hell. You're a shliach to hell. You're not in we not goyres that somebody is in hell. Doesn't exist. If you're in hell, you're a shliach there. So it's time to open a Chabad house. Time to create an institution. You're dealing with depression, and you're dealing with anxiety, and your brain is one of those interesting brains that you're not sure if and when and how you want to live, whatever, all these funny things going on in some of your brains. So there's two ways of looking at it. One way of looking at it is I'm really screwed up, and Prozac and Zoloft has not been helping. And the 7 years of therapy, first of all, I'm out of money. And second of all, I've been already to 12 of them. And I'm done. Right? And even Aliya is getting boring. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is you were sent into this place. You were given this brain, you were given this soul, you were given this life story because you are empowered to be able to confront it, to look at it squarely in your eyes, unflinchingly, and to bring a certain amount of light into that reality. That's how you look at it. You say I'm in purgatory, I'm in the abyss, I'm down there. You're not there, you were sent there. And you were sent there by someone who appreciates you more than you'll ever imagine. Shluchai shel Adam k'moisa. You were sent there. In our generation, every person was sent. You were sent, and if you were sent, you represent the one who sent you. And therefore, never underestimate your power, boys. And never underestimate your ability and your courage to be able to bring light into every situation of your life. I love you, and I bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Get a hug from both of us together. Die machen sich tausend im Wasser. Zeigt das nicht?
WhatsApp, I got to listen again. That's never, never.